Okay.
What's going on, guys? This is Jimmy.
Hey, this is Rachel.
Thank you guys so much for joining Relationship Real Talk. We are excited about today's show. We have some amazing guests that's going to be joining us today.
Yes, we do.
We're looking forward to that. But as usual, guys, we want you guys to share this feed with your followers. Also, we want you to come on in the living room with us and comment and give us some likes and the hearts and all the good stuff, because we want to feel your presence in our living room with us today.
And don't forget to rep your city. Oh, I really see some hearts and stuff going up. Oh, I saw a frown. But yes, rep your city. Tell us what city you're watching us from, what country you might be watching us from, because we just want to feel like, I mean, whether we're under quarantine or not, we've been having these conversations, and we want to be able to make an impact, and we want you guys to talk to us as we talk to you.
Right.
But as my husband said, today's show topic we're so excited about, because we do have some special guests. Our show topic is based on principle number 6 of our Relationship Principles book. Commit to the marriage winning.
Amen.
All I do is win, win, win. Teamwork. Is it me or is it we?
Right.
So on today, our guests are very special, as I mentioned, Oliver and Denise Marcel. They are the founders of Denali LLC, speaking, facilitating, mentoring, coaching. They have been married for 18 years. They have 3 children, Jamaica, Stephanie, and Justin. Before starting Denali, Oliver and Denise would find themselves mentoring couples, sharing parts of their marriage journey, or even giving advice to the singles. Since starting Denali, they've had the opportunity to facilitate several marriage group sessions, as well as conduct seminars they've designed. The most requested is the entitled Extreme Marriage Makeover.
I like that.
Love to hear about that. Through coaching and mentoring, seminars, podcasts, videos, and social media, they offer a candid look into their own marriage, with the goal of being to encourage couples and help them explore, grow, and learn together. Helping relationships grow is their passion, and it is Oliver and Denise's desire and mission to ultimately guide couples into a relationship that mirrors the relationship that Christ has with his church.
Amen.
All right, put your hands together for Denise and Oliver, also known as Denali. All right.
Hi.
What's up, family?
Hey, guys.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We truly do appreciate you all.
Thank
We
you
know
for
that
having
you guys
us.
are super busy, and you're world famous. So
Oh,
to
wow.
have you guys on
Oh, wow.
have you guys on our show is really an honor and a blessing. We do appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much.
Man,
Thanks for
it's the
having us.
pleasure
It's an
is
honor.
ours. Yeah,
We're
absolutely.
excited to be here.
You're welcome. And again, we're going to be talking about relationship 6, which is commit to your marriage winning. And I know that in this ministry that you all do, I've heard a lot of you all's talks and podcasts, and I know that you all share a lot of the same value systems that we share as it relates to marriage.
Right.
And so I just want to go ahead and get right on into the show so we won't belabor this thing. So I'm gonna start out with the icebreaker question.
Go for it.
What does teamwork look like to you both? And I would love for you both to answer that individually. What
Okay.
does teamwork look like to you both?
Well, I think it looks like both of us using the strengths that we each have and bringing them together for the common goal, whatever the goal is at that time in the relationship. Using both of our strengths, bringing them together, and working towards achieving the goal that we have for the relationship.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I would agree with that. When I think of teamwork, because I'm a sports guy, I immediately go to sports related analogies, right? So if you think about a basketball team, there are 5 guys on a basketball team. They all play a specific position,
That's right.
and that position is vital to the success of that game, whether they win or lose. So the guard, if he's playing center, then the symmetry's messed up, right? The synergy's messed up. If the center is always at the top of the key, that's not going to work. And so when I look at teamwork as it relates to marriage, everybody has a part, right? And they play that part very well. Now, that's not to say that the guard can't play power forward. He probably can, but for this specific task, the guard needs to remain the guard. And I think that's how it is in marriage. There's a specific task or task that I am, that I govern. There's specific tasks that she does. And the teamwork comes together where we put those things together for, like she said, the common goal.
Right.
We're trying to win, right? You talked about winning in your introduction, right? And
Without a
so,
doubt. And you bring up something that maybe even people who are not married yet, maybe contemplating marriage, how do you go from, dating seriously, you're engaged, and now you're married and you know what your role or task is? Because I think that's something that people struggle with sometimes. Like, how do you know what the other person's supposed to be doing or not doing?
that's a good question.
That's a good question. I think it all starts with communication. You have to learn your spouse or your future spouse, even. You have to learn what their strengths are and what they can bring to the relationship.
And some of that I think is through observation, but a great deal of that I believe is through communication. Like there are some specific conversations that have to take place.
Yeah.
And those conversations may be birthed out of observation, or they just may be birthed out of questions. I may come to her and be like, hey, can you do X, Y, Z? Or, she may say, yes, I can, or no, I can't. And then the conversation will go from there. If she says, no, I can't, then we got to come up with a game plan, especially if I can't. We have to figure some things out. And if I can, I can say, okay, well, how do you feel about me doing such and such? Or, I've done this before. How about I try it and see what happens? And we go from there. So there's some very specific conversations that have to happen. What we did, right? Just to be transparent. In the beginning, we didn't have those conversations.
Did not.
So when you don't have those conversations, there's a lot of trial and error, right? So me as the guard, I'm running around, in the low post. I don't know what I'm doing, and we're not having those conversations. We're winging it. We're playing it by ear. And then finally, we're like, wait a minute, we're taking too many L's. We got to figure this thing out.
Yeah.
We got to come back to the drawing board. We got to watch some tapes, see what we did wrong, and have some conversations about, hey, listen, you know what? Next time, let me just stay up here and play my position. Or how about next time you try X, Y, Z? And that's how we got to it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you use basketball or sports as an analogy, because I often use that same analogy. And I say when it comes to teamwork, or when even, we're talking basketball, but we're keeping in mind we're talking about a relationship or marriage. You have two types of individuals. You either have a team player or you just have a player. A team player is concerned with the overall victory of the team. If he's the person that's scoring a lot that day, okay, great. If he's the one that's playing defense that day for the team to win, he's okay with that. And that's what we want in our marriage.
Yep.
We may not always be the high scorer or the one that's always producing, because some days we may have an off day, or some days the person or the thing that I'm dealing with, the individual that I'm guarding that day, may be the better offensive person, and my main focus now is defense. And now my wife is the offensive player. She has to step up now and do the scoring, because I'm tired, because I'm playing defense on this dude all day trying to contain him, right? But then you have that player. All that individual is concerned about is their personal records. I'm only concerned about how many points I'm scoring. I'm only concerned about how many rebounds I'm getting. I'm only concerned about this, because he's not team oriented
or even goal oriented.
Well, he's goal oriented, but it's not for the team.
But only for
It's
his,
not for the team.
Yeah.
And sometimes I know, just working in this ministry, I work with couples where you find that, oh wow, one of them, or maybe sometimes both of them, are just players. They're trying to pad their own stats. They're trying to get what they want. And that's one of the things that we talked about in this relationship principle is, and we brought it under the context of conflict. When you're having conflict, are you trying to win, or are you trying to make the marriage win?
Yeah.
Because, too often we want to win.
Mhm.
And if I win, she's going to lose.
Mm.
And if she loses, she's not happy. So therefore, the marriage is going to suffer.
Suffer. Yeah.
You know, but if we look at it from the perspective of, okay, Jimmy, it's not about you winning, it's about the marriage winning.
Yeah.
So what that does inadvertently is it causes us sometimes to say, I'm not going to get necessarily what I want in my preference area, but principle wise, this thing is going to work out best for the marriage.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And I think when we can think along those lines as a couple, we tend to have a better chance at having that relationship that we're all dreaming about.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you guys are a blended family?
Yeah.
We are.
We are.
Yeah, as we are as well. And when you guys were talking about everyone doing their tasks and how you were so transparent, which I appreciate, at the very beginning, you were still like you didn't have that conversation. So you were trying to figure it out. And I would say the same for us is when you come from a situation where either you've been married before or you've had children, you've run a household,
Mm-hmm.
you've had to play all part. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You the point guard.
Yeah.
You're shooting down low. You're the post. You're everything. And so, what I think is deep about that is it's your default even
Right.
after you're married.
Yes.
And I remember one time I don't know if we were engaged at this point. I think we were because he's like, Rachel, I got it. Like,
Mm.
let it go. Like you don't have to always shoulder everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to learn how to actually move out of this position and trust that he can handle that position.
Absolutely. Same too. I know that when we came to, even though you knew the girls for a very long time and were very close to them before we got married, once we got married, like me and the girls had a routine. We knew how to do
Maneuver.
everything and run down the court and whatever else they do in basketball. We knew how to do
Set
all of
picks,
that. Yeah.
all that.
And then here comes another player, and I'm like, well, that's not how we do it.
We don't know where to put you.
We don't know where to put you. There's no room for you in this
Right,
on
right.
this court. So I had to learn, like you said, Rachel, to just allow him to come onto the court and show me what he can do with the girls. And I had to learn to trust that, he was going to make those baskets. It was tough in the beginning to give him the ball, so to speak.
That is
Wow.
powerful.
Yeah.
That is
I want to hear
powerful.
from Oliver. How was that for you coming into a team that seemed to have all the players in position?
Definitely an adjustment because you have to do one of two things, right? You have to be assertive enough to be like, hey, I know how to do this.
Yeah.
But yet at the same time, you can't come in and just be like, I know how to do this, so I'm doing it all.
Right, right.
So just learning that balance between, hey, I do have something to bring to the table. However, I'm not trying to just disrupt the table, right? So I'm gonna, look at the plays, if you will, if we keep the basketball analogy, see what the plays are and how you've been running those plays. Maybe I can fit something in, make a suggestion here. I'm not just trying to tear up the playbook.
Right.
Very good.
And I think that's where sometimes we make that mistake, where we come in and be like, okay, I know how to do this, so this is how we're going to do it. And then now you're just butting heads instead of creating some type of synergy. And so for me, it was that delicate dance. And believe me, I'm not saying I got it right all the time, but I definitely was cognizant of the fact that, okay, hey, I'm kind of the odd man out in this situation. They've kind of lived this thing for a while. And so I need to just, peacefully and, but assertively put in what I can put in, and
How long do you
make
think
that
it
work.
took before y'all got into the flow of
Mercy.
okay, every man knows their position? Doesn't mean things don't come up, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. We got a question for you about that. But like, how long in your 18 years of marriage was like, okay, I think everybody knows what position they play?
I honestly don't think that it took that long, only because the girls and Ollie had somewhat of a relationship before. I think that made it a little bit easier in our situation. Honestly, the girls knew him before I did. So I think
Okay.
it made it a little bit easier. Wouldn't you say so? It wasn't as long, I think, as it typically could be. So,
Yeah, I would
How
agree
old
with
were the
that.
girls?
The girls were when I met Denise, the girls were 11 months and
Oh wow.
4 and a half when we met.
Okay.
right,
When we met, not when we got married.
right when we met, right. So for me, I think I agree with you.
Hmm.
I think what made it difficult at the times where it was difficult is that the two of us were trying to get on the same page
Hmm.
because oddly enough, we were best of friends for 5 years or so before we would talk about marriage. But for some reason, when we got married, it's like we felt like we were playing a different game.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm.
So all the while when we were friends, we were playing basketball and it was working.
Right.
And then we tried to get on the football field with basketball moves,
Mm.
thinking that we had to make that switch because we were different people now. And trying to get back from that, I think made the transition a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Well, look, if you all give us a moment here, I want to bring up a comment that someone made. Angela made a comment. She said that let me show this. She said, "Real good talk. As an independent woman re-entering a new relationship, I held on too much to make sure."
I was left in the cold again.
Right, right. So,
Okay.
and then I tell you, a lot of times we all may fall prey to that. There are certain things that we get accustomed to doing, and we don't let go, and it becomes a tug of war.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
it's like, and I laugh because I'm practical in thinking. Like, I don't have a problem with women's lib. I'm good. Like, okay, great, but that's got to be all the time. You can't pick and choose when you want to be.
Mm.
Right.
So if you want to be strong when I'm trying to be the man, okay, great. So when you hear that bump in the night, go check it. You was just hard a few minutes ago. Go check it. You know what I'm saying? And so then
He knows he goes checks.
right.
for both
But I'm
tonight.
just saying, everybody want to be strong till it's really time to be strong.
Right,
You're like,
right,
go
right.
ahead, I'll defer.
Yeah.
But and I think sometimes we all do that, or me. There were areas where I was accustomed to doing stuff, and she was better at it. But because I was doing it, I'm like, I got this. And and so when she did it, I was like, oh man, I probably should let her been doing this all along.
Yes, and you know what's so funny, and I think you guys are kind of alluding to this, and so are you. We get stuck in our comfort zones. It's like a sense of security
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we have from having all the bases covered.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And the minute you have to let go of that base or that position, trust, like you mentioned, that becomes a thing. It's not even that you don't trust. Like, I trust him. As my husband, I wouldn't have married him if I didn't trust him. But there's just something so deeply rooted when it comes to our way of life and the way we're accustomed to operating.
Yeah.
And it can kind of shake you, shake you at your core a little bit when you're like, whoa, I gotta actually let that go. And like he said, there are a lot of things I think we're both good at, but it's also figuring out who might be better suited in this situation
Yep.
Yeah.
to get it done, which
Yeah.
means you got to be willing to humble yourself.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And you have to be willing to, and this might not be for everybody, but for a lot of folks, you also have to be willing to go through that trial and error
Yes.
phase, which actually comes back around in several stages. Like, we're in a different stage in our life now than we were 10 years ago.
Right.
So there's some more of that trial and error now because there's some things that she does well in this stage. There's some things I do well in that stage. And so just couples can't get discouraged
Right.
when you don't get it right.
Mhm.
That's not really a reason for you to just be like, oh, you know what? I'm not playing this game no more.
Right. Throw in the towel. Give me my
Right.
ball. I'm out of here.
There's going to be that. There's no team. Like, if you think about, if we stand with basketball, there's no team that has won the championship every year.
Nope.
It's never happened in the history of sports. There's no team that's won it every single year. There's people who have repeated and three-peated, but no one wins it every year, right? So there's people who have to go back to the drawing board. What did we do wrong? How did we miss? what can we do better? And it's the same thing that we have to do with as couples.
Yeah.
Well, I like how you said that. You said
Yeah.
you all do things differently now than you did 10 years ago. And
Yep.
back to the teams, every year that you win, you're getting older
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
and your abilities diminish
mm,
in certain areas. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
mhm.
Or you all are evolving where the things that you used to do, you no longer have to do those things anymore. So now you have new trials and new
Yeah.
Exactly.
new aspirations. And so I
Exactly.
think when we keep the mindset of Rachel, as an educator, they have a growth mindset. And I think when you keep a growth mindset, like things are going to ever be changing, right? How do we deal with the changes that are happening that's out of our control?
Mm.
Mm,
Because sometimes we struggle with dealing with things that's out of our control. Now,
Yeah.
if there's something that we have total control over, but we're choosing to do whatever that thing is, that's something totally different. But I think too many of us struggle with things that are out of our control. And as a man, meeting her, I lost my wife prior to her after she gave birth to our son. So getting with Rachel, I knew that, man, my son is only going to know her as mom,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know? And so there was a lot that I had to go through emotionally and mentally
mm,
to say, am I okay with that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
am I really okay with that? Like, this is the only person he's going to know as mom. And so once we started dating and I started to see how, not only how she interacted with him, but how the girls interacted with him, literally I was just disarmed. Any fears or concerns I may have had, they dissipated like quickly.
mm.
Because, and what was funny was, now that we're married, people have no idea that he's not her biological child
Right.
until
Yeah.
we say it.
Yeah, some people are probably just finding that out right
Right.
now.
Right now.
You
Yeah.
know, we don't make a secret of it,
Right.
but because it was a God thing, and,
Yeah.
and I think that's a big thing that we want to put in here. Put that scripture up, honey. That we want to make sure we stress is that sometimes people rush into situations because I think I had been divorced for 7 years before I remarried, and I was not in a rush. I was fine. I wasn't one of those people that felt like, oh, I don't want no man, but neither was I actively looking. I just don't believe in that. I'm like, when it's time, it's going to happen authentically and when God is ready for that to happen for me. And so you cannot rush it.
Yeah.
And literally, it was God's hands moving through our situation to bring us together for such a time as that.
Right.
And I'm speaking to people, like I said, who may not be married, want to be married. As a matter of fact, Angela Ruffin said, after 16 years, she's still carrying it all. She's tired and now she's complaining. But I once heard, better to be single and happy than married and miserable.
That's it.
Hey,
Absolutely.
I
Although
second that.
we're all for marriage, right?
Yep.
Yep.
And we support it, and working through it. And I think you mentioned something, Oliver, that was so poignant, which is teams don't win every
Year.
year.
That's right.
Doesn't mean there's not some great things they're doing,
Right.
but they're
Yeah.
not going to walk away with the championship cup.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so when you said that, it just made me think about, you got to go back and reassess, where are we?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What do we need to edit? What do we need
Yeah.
to fix
Mm-hmm.
to make it better? And so, what I would say to people is, it's nothing wrong with setting benchmarks for yourself. But sometimes I think, especially maybe with people who have never been married before, if they go into a marriage thinking that everything, yeah, it might be a few problems, but I'm going to live happily ever after because I'm so in love with this person,
Mm.
that they don't realize there are going to be some major roadblocks that you're going to hit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, but it's how you work together
Mm-hmm.
as a team with the help of God to get through, to knock it down, jump over it, get around it, whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
There are some benchmarks that you have in order to get through that marriage.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with
Absolutely.
that. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, what are the benefits in your mind? What are the benefits of committing to your marriage winning? Like a lot of times people you know, I hear that. That sounds good in theory, but you know, you don't know my situation.
Mm.
What would you tell a couple who is struggling with the whole concept of, you know, it's not always about you. And
Mm.
yeah, it may not be perfect, but if you're focusing on your marriage winning, here's some benefits. What would you tell them?
I think that I just, going back to the beginning of our
Mhm,
marriage,
mhm,
again, when we weren't in that mindset, most things was just not meshing.
mhm.
And it just makes for a tumultuous relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And I just feel like if we're both on the same page with that mindset, it just makes the relationship run smoother. And it's
Mm.
just less chaotic.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a definite benefit. And another benefit is kind of what you said in your question. You begin to think differently
Mhm.
when you start to shift the focus to, all right, I want us to win.
Yeah.
In order for us to win, your mindset has to shift, right? You can't be thinking about, or I can't be thinking about what I get out of it. I
Mm.
have to be thinking about how this works for her. What is it that she needs? How can I facilitate her position? She has to in turn do the same for me. And that's a benefit because that helps to diminish selfishness. That helps to eliminate this, me mindset. And that's kind of what we were dealing with in the
Yeah.
beginning because that's how I got into it with this me mindset. How am I going to win? And when you think about how you're going to win, then you start trying to win at the expense of your relationship.
Exactly.
Mm.
And if you
Exactly.
think about how the relationship is going to
That's
win, your
powerful.
mindset has to shift to
Mm.
how I can facilitate this relationship winning,
That's
which
right.
you have to give up of yourself to do that.
Mm.
You have to.
Wow.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, Matthew 19:6 really does kind of, you know, set the tone for this conversation. It's like, so they are no longer two, but one flesh.
One.
Mhm.
Hmm.
What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate. And most of the time when we read that scripture, we're thinking outside entities
Hmm.
Right.
separating us. We never consider us separating us
Mm.
Wow.
because of what
That's
we're
true.
doing. It says
Yeah.
That's
no
good.
man, and you're, even if
You're
Part
you
of
are
part
a
of
that.
that.
Yeah.
woman, you are a man. That is
Right.
you're the individual that is referring to. And I
Mm.
Hmm.
think sometimes we're so busy looking for something outward to destroy us
Hmm.
when most of the time it's something
We're
inward.
doing it. Yep.
Wow.
And we know that, just the art of war is you destroy it from the inside. When somebody's
Yeah.
being attacked from the outside, they tend to get a stronger defense. It's
Hmm.
hard to defend a destruction from within,
Yep.
And
and so we have to really realize that when we're talking about winning, we are one. So if I'm focused on what makes Rachel better or what makes her feel her best, I'm actually still gonna win
Mm.
because she's going to in return be her best for me and vice
Hmm.
versa. But I
Yeah.
think sometimes we don't see it from a macro perspective.
Right.
We're
Exactly.
only looking at it from that micro perspective.
right. And
Hmm.
if I could piggyback off what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
the beginning of that scripture says, "So they are no longer two, but one flesh."
Mm-hmm.
So when you think of that, you think in the physical sense, but also when you think about, they talk about twins who, like, when one's in pain, the other one feels it.
Hmm.
One's
Yep.
sad, the other one feels it.
Mm.
So in essence, when you're in a marriage, if he is hurt, I should be hurt
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because we are both one. So if there's
Hmm.
something, if there's a decision I'm making, if there's a behavior I'm manifesting that is producing harm towards him, then our bond should be so close that I should feel it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I don't want
Absolutely.
to hurt him. As
Mm.
our
Right.
counselor once told us, when I look at Jimmy, I should see Rachel.
Hmm.
Wow.
And when
Yep.
Jimmy looks at
Yep.
me, he should see Jimmy.
Yeah.
So guess what that means? He don't want to come at himself any kind of way.
Right.
He
Hmm.
wants to treat himself right.
That's powerful.
And
I like that.
yeah, it's just a powerful thing. So we tend to think about the physical aspect of the two being one, but what about the spiritual, emotional, psychological aspect of becoming one?
And
That's
that brings up another scripture that blew my mind when I read it and really just researched it. Ephesians 5:28 and 29. It says, "In the same way, husbands should love their wives as their own bodies.
Mm.
He who loves his wife loves himself.
So,
And to me, I'm like, do you really get it? It's like,
Yeah.
and that's not just exclusive to husbands. I think that works in reverse too with the wives. You know, when you're loving your husband, wives, you're loving yourself. When you're respecting him, you're respecting yourself. You know, because it was kind of ironic to me that God gave us different tasks, but that would achieve the same goal. For women, He said you need to be respectful,
Yeah.
and men, He said you need to love.
right.
Because He knew where we were weak.
That was the challenge.
Yes.
He knew where we were going to be challenged.
Wow.
He knew men were going to struggle with showing love.
Hmm.
Not that we didn't love you,
Yeah.
but showing it, you know, expressing it, acting upon it, you know. And He knew women were going to be disrespectful. He just knew it. That's why He said, look, respect your husband.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and because those are, and I guarantee, let me just ask you all this. Out of the relationships that you work with, how many of them at some point are dealing with respect and love?
Yeah.
I would think most of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Most of them.
And even when I think about us, it's gonna boil down to one of those two things: respect and love.
Yep.
like-
And what's the beauty of that text, right? Because it's where is it? Is it verse 32 where it really starts? Where what we always say to people, where husbands love your wives.
Right.
So what's crazy about that, right? We always give that. What is it? 32. What's the last verse?
I want
How many
to say
verses?
I can-
35 or 36, but
I can pull it up.
you gonna pull it up?
So we always give that last part, right? We always say that to couples, starting with the husbands love your wives as Christ loved the church.
And wives respect your
Right.
husband. Yeah.
And we always give them that, right? But what's funny about that, we were talking to a group of people and we were telling them that is like if you think about IKEA, right? And you go into IKEA, everything is nicely put together. But when you buy something from IKEA, that's not what you get.
Right.
Hey,
You got
You
to
get a
put it
box.
together.
break it down.
You get a box of a whole bunch of stuff that you have to put together,
That's
right?
right.
The last part of that chapter is that showroom in IKEA.
Exactly.
In order to achieve that, you got to go all the way back to, I think it's like chapter 4, verse 17, I think. And from 17 all the way to that other, to where we get to, it talks about all those kinds of things that you need to be doing, how you need to be talking, and how you know different things, not being angry and all that, you know, that kind of stuff. It tells you how to. It's the blueprint, if you will,
Exactly.
for how to live out that. You know, so I love that you put that up there because that is.
Most of us we love getting the picture of the mansion, but we don't ever have the construction of it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like nobody ever talks about, hey, you know, before a mansion is built, somebody has to dream it.
Yeah.
And then you have to get an architect to draw it up.
Mm.
And then once he draw it up, then you go in there and you're like, I really don't like that wall there. Is that a weight bearing wall? Can we move that wall? And so you go through all of these different changes to get that finished product that everybody's oohing and ahhing about.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with our marriages. People are, oh, you all have such a great marriage. You don't know how much work we've been putting in.
Exactly.
And
And
as
it's
great
the
as you
same.
think it is, it's still in a work in progress. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't really take value in the work that has to be done to achieve those things that we like to say as cliches. You know, husband, love your wives, and wives honor and respect your husband.
Right.
Yeah, that doesn't come overnight.
No.
It doesn't.
That doesn't
And
happen.
often we don't really convey that. Right.
Right.
And sometimes we have to tell couples, hey, on behalf of everything that you've heard throughout your life, we apologize for not telling you that you would have to work at it. Like
Exactly.
it's, you know, if you think about it, we give this happily ever after,
Yep.
you know, motif to relationships. And then when people get into it, they're like, I don't
That's
see what
not
you're,
what I saw.
yeah, I don't see what you're talking
Yeah.
about.
Right.
You know, and just you talking about your relationship winning, there's so much that has to go into winning, right?
That's right.
You have to draw up the plays. You have to
Right.
practice the plays and see if they work. They might not work.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
You know, you may draw up a play and it looks great on paper, and then when you go to execute, you're like, "Oh, this was a fail."
Because
Like
because what we don't
100%.
realize is some of us didn't have the same skill sets as that other team had that executed it well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So maybe we have to make some adjustments to get the same results. You
The
know,
work's gonna have
Yes.
to be done either way.
you're right.
Yep.
Either way it goes.
You know,
Yeah.
whether it happened before
Mhm.
you got together, while you're together, the work has
Mhm.
to happen.
Yeah.
And it continues to happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
and it continues to happen. It's something that doesn't just stop. And I'll read what he said in just a minute. But I'm so glad they said what they said, because that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to do this ministry with my husband, is because getting married the first time, not that I thought everything was going to be perfect, but I just had no idea to what degree
Mm.
of work. And then, I put in a lot of work, but of course, you both have to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah.
And I just remember leaving saying, going to counseling and saying, I don't want to mislead people. I don't want you to think marriage is bad, because marriage can
Yeah.
be a beautiful thing, like exactly what Robert Ed Jr. said, marriage between husband and wife is symbolic as Christ loves the church. So
Yep.
when you think about that, I mean, that's a beautiful love, a deep love, a strong love. But I mean, even on our end of it, we come up so short.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Well, and Jesus, that wasn't no smooth ride, because it was the church that said kill him.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Right.
there
They
was
were
a,
the ones
there's a
plotting
lot
against him.
that
And I
goes
was
on.
thinking that when you said that, Jimmy,
Right.
too, because it's also, and this is what the struggle for us, and I'm saying us as a couple and us in general, it is often a one-sided love.
Mm.
More
And
than we
that's
want to
a
admit.
hard pill for
Yes.
people to swallow.
Yes.
There are going to be some times where she's carrying more of the weight than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But there are going to be times where I'm carrying more of the weight than she is. As
In
we're
certain
talking about a
areas.
team, right? There's some days that I'm going to be way off,
Yeah.
hitting no, I can't buy a bucket.
Right.
Mm.
And she has to be willing to step up to the plate and put the team on her back,
Mm.
Right.
right? And so sometimes it feels very one-sided,
Yeah.
but it's not. That's part of what a team does, right?
Right.
A team jumps in, it's like, hey, I see you're down. I see you having a bad day. I see you don't feel good. I got you.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you said that it's a bad day. There's a difference between a bad day, because you are a team player that's just having a bad day, than you being that other person we talked about, that player.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you just, those are two different dynamics.
Yeah.
One, you always have hope. He ain't
Mm.
gonna always suck, because last week he scored 30.
Yeah.
He just have a bad day. But when we know that that's the case, it makes life a little bit easier, And I was telling my wife as we were preparing for this earlier, I love to cover both dynamics, because here's what I've learned working with couples. It is nothing worse than making a person who is experiencing a certain thing and we gloss over it like it's not really happening,
Yeah.
right? Because we have to cover both dynamics. There are some people who they're just not doing right by their significant other, right?
Yep.
And that significant other can be a team player, but I mean, you can only do so much. I've often said this, I don't care how good Jordan was, but I bet you those other 4 people left that court,
Can do it.
he would lose.
Couldn't do it.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so at some point, we all have to have that support. And when you are involved with someone, for whatever their reasons are at a certain period of your relationship that's not carrying their weight, it hurts. You know what I'm saying? And it's depressing. It's debilitating. It's all of those things, especially when you don't know what else to do. Like you've been carrying the team. And it's like, man, you all won't even come to practice,
You're
Wow.
not even showing up. And I
Right.
think that's why when Oliver said, there are going to be times when you are strong, she is weak, and when she is weak, you are strong, or what have you. That creates a balance in and of itself.
It does.
It
Because I
does.
think people think it's just always supposed to be equal. It's not always going to be equal
Yeah.
with that weight that's being carried. But I to your point, you can be in a situation, and I was in a situation in my first marriage where after a while it literally felt like, okay, God, I've done everything I know to do to
Mhm.
keep this thing together, praying, fasting. I mean, you name it. Let's go to counseling, what have you. And then you sometimes, unfortunately, you come to the decision, well, maybe we did have to part ways. That's not something I would want for anyone. Even though it was a decision that I made,
Mhm.
it was a very devastating one for me because that's not the legacy I wanted to leave for my children.
Yeah.
Right.
But I'm glad you brought it up because it is some people's reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to put this disclaimer out there. When you are dealing with abuse, addiction, abandonment,
Mhm.
adultery, those 4 A's, there are some different steps you might have to take.
Right.
So, people, we're not talking about somebody's like running you, you know, to the bone, to the ground, and never being that person that's like, okay, I got us now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hold you down here. You need that balance.
Yeah, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
guys, one of the other things, we wanted to ask you guys, what do you do in your relationship now? Because this is a perfect segue to this question. What do you do in your relationship to maintain an atmosphere of teamwork when one person doesn't want to comply? What do you do?
Or when there's a
Wow.
conflict as it
Right.
relates to,
Right,
Yeah.
right. What do you do? Because,
That's a good
you
question.
know, some people like, look, I've done that. I've done that. I've
Yeah.
done that. And it's still the same thing, And what do you say to them? What do you say to that person?
I think first we just again conversation, talk about it, and try to figure out from the person that's not really doing as much as they used to do, or what I guess stepping up to the plate, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
It's just try and find out what's going on. Is everything okay? Am I missing something? What's wrong? What is going on? Before you just jump on their case and be like, well, you ain't doing this, and all of what's going wrong is your fault. You're the
Right.
problem because you ain't pulling your weight. I think first we should, what we do is just talk to each other and be like, is everything okay? How can I help?
Right.
What do you need from me in order to do what it is that you normally do?
that's a good
Yeah.
question right there.
Yeah, and it's funny you would say that because that's what I was thinking. And what we've learned to do, I
Yeah.
guess, is how we should
Yeah.
preface that, is going to each other and saying, "Hey, what do you need from me?" Because
Mhm.
often what we tend to do, what we've done, is that we
Mm.
immediately go to the other person and be like, "How come you ain't doing this?"
Yeah.
Right.
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 We're going in this confrontational attack mode. Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you say that? Why didn't you take care of this?
Mhm.
We went about it that way.
Yeah.
Right.
And all that does is just tear things
More
further apart.
conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And just realizing because there's strategy involved in marriage, right? So once you realize, wait a minute, okay, I just asked her, what can I do to help? And the whole atmosphere changed.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mhm.
Let me write that down.
Mhm.
That may come up again.
That's a key
I may
one.
need to pull that one out of my pocket again. And so just kind of learning that, okay, that's a good way to deal with that. That's something that we learned to do over the years is, hey, I see, the synergy's off a little bit. The phrase we use often is we're like two ships in the night. So I'll look at her and literally just say those two words. I'll just be like two ships. And that we just know, okay, we need to
Right.
have a conversation.
Yeah.
We need to
Yeah.
get back to
We gotta
what do
recalibrate.
you need from me?
Recalibrate.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's what has worked for us. I think that it's just important to whatever you do in a practical sense to try to keep that synergy together.
Mm-hmm.
In the times when it's off, you cannot go into attack mode.
Right.
Mhm.
That's one thing that's crucial. You cannot go into attack mode because immediately when you go into attack mode, you are opening the door to create a larger conflict.
Mhm.
Mm.
So now you're not even dealing with whatever the situation
original
is
issue.
that I may have dropped the ball on. Now we're just at each other because I attacked you. And when you attack somebody, they get defensive,
Yeah.
Right.
as they should.
Yes.
Right.
And
Right.
so now we're dealing with a whole nother issue, which may turn
Yes.
into something a lot bigger. So that's something we definitely have to avoid.
Mhm.
Guys, I want to bring up something else. One of the viewers said. He said Christ Church may disappoint him just like spouses disappoint each other. But in the end, his true church will be true to Christ. And I agree with that. And then he went on to say, he said that look within yourself first before looking outward to others for fault.
Mhm.
And he's speaking to, and I
Self-analysis.
right, the self-analysis, in which that's one of our relationship principles as well. But when you all said, you know, you go to him and go, how can I help?
Mhm.
You know, is everything okay? You know, and so sometimes I think sometimes things are isn't even about fault. Sometimes it's about burden.
Hmm.
You know, and I think I heard you all talking about this the other night, a Thursday night. Um, as a man, sometimes we are overwhelmed,
Mhm.
Yep.
but
Yeah.
we don't want to come across as a failure or
Mm.
Oh, show
disappointment.
weakness.
Or you know, sometimes it's not even really about weakness. It's about like, man, I don't know what to do here.
Mm.
And
Like,
I'm supposed to
Right.
be the one to know what to do.
That
right,
no.
right,
Right.
yeah, and
That
I'm
no
supposed to
is
be the
right.
one, you know, and then and if I tell her, I don't want her to be disappointed. I don't want her to, you know, look down on me or whatever. And sometimes people burden themselves
Mm.
unnecessarily
Yeah.
because sometimes the spouse is like, why didn't you just say something?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and so, but that goes back to what my wife likes to say. You know, people need to feel that they're in an environment where they can share those type
Right.
of innermost
Mm.
concerns. You know what I'm saying? Because
Hmm.
Yeah.
if they've shared something with you before and you was like, man up, punk, stop being a punk.
Yeah.
Right.
And we got to be
Never
careful
gonna
of
work.
They're gonna be
that.
like deuces. I
Yes.
guarantee I will never say anything
I'll
else.
never
You
do
know?
that
What
Yeah.
I
again.
like about what do you need from me, it does two things. It disarms the individual
Mhm.
so they
Hmm.
don't feel like they have to now put up a wall. I mean, they probably already had a wall there, they just don't have to
Yeah.
reinforce
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
And
Right.
two, it makes them reflective
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
because when you ask somebody, what do you need from me? They have to think,
They have to
hmm,
stop and think
what
about
do
it.
I need from them?
Right.
Yeah.
Actually, nothing. It's me.
Right.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Or because other than that, you just kind of on this. You have this tunnel vision of you're in your like we say you're in your
Feelings.
feelings,
Right.
Hmm.
and you
Mhm.
don't even realize that
Wow.
whatever it is that you're giving off has nothing sometimes to do with that other person.
Right.
It
Hmm.
has to do with something that you have to resolve within
How it's being
yourself.
processed. Yep.
Wow.
So those that phrase, what do you need from me? I think that was a golden nugget. For those of you, if you didn't hear that, that really is something great to say to disarm in a situation where you see that you're two ships.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, Jessica said she's
Jessica
gonna steal
said
that. She said, I like that catchphrase.
two
We
ships.
we gotta get one. Might have to steal the two ships one.
Hey,
The two ships one.
that's
Yeah,
how
I like
it
that one.
worked for us.
It
And
works
it's
for
not
us.
As
it's
soon as we
not
say that, as soon
mhm.
as we say that, we know. Okay, we
Yes.
got to have
It's like
a
that safe
conversation.
word, you know. You know, people
Yeah.
say we need safe words, you know.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So y'all have a safe phrase, two
Yep.
ships.
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
it, it's not
Ships.
aggressive, it's
Right,
not, but it lets the other one know like we're like this
right.
Right.
and we
Yeah.
need to come together. So I mean
Hmm.
that sounds like,
That's
a
a winner.
great
That's a
way.
keeper.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
definitely a keeper there.
Yeah, man. I tell you, one of the blessings of interacting with another couple that does what we do is, you can always get different perspectives on things.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I often tell people, um, I, I I won't claim to be a handyman, but I've learned how to do a lot of different things. And what I've learned is if you don't have the right tool,
Mm.
a simple job can become very hard.
Yep.
Wow.
You
Yeah.
know, and so and anyone that is a handyman, they have 1,000 tools.
Yep.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
so that
and
means
so
you're a handyman.
so relationships in relationships you can never get enough tools. You
Oh
Yeah.
know,
You're
Lord.
right.
and that's just something that I'm learning. You know, Rachel and I, June will be together 8 years, married 8 years,
Hmm.
and every year I'm learning something new. I have to discover another tool to use in
Mhm.
order for our marriage to keep evolving.
And
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and growing because it's like, man, I thought I had it, got it last month, but I need another
Hmm.
tool,
Yeah.
Yep.
and so because it's ever evolving, and I think when we cannot become complacent in
No.
this journey of a relationship, you know, because it keeps changing.
Yeah.
Right.
And change is not necessarily bad. It's just that we're growing.
Right.
You know, what I liked 2 years ago, I may not necessarily like now.
Mhm.
But
you
I
know?
think it should be an overall movement.
Yeah, it should be a growth thing.
Yeah.
Going
Right,
on
right.
on that curve, because
Definitely.
it's not always going to be like here's a great litmus test for people who might be out there wondering, wow, has my marriage grown, and where are we? You want to think about the things that you may have had arguments about or conflicts about
Mm.
early on in your relationship.
That's
What
good.
does that look like now
Right.
when you're
Right.
discussing those things?
Right.
Or are you still
Yeah.
Same
arguing
arguments.
about the same arguments the same way the whole entire, marriage or relationship? That's kind of tough, not to mention draining. And I
Yes.
could
Very
truly say,
draining.
although there are some things that I know we bump heads about, I can truly say that we've grown when it comes to picking and choosing our battles. That's
Yeah.
still a process, but I've heard that saying before. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right?
Right.
you know and because we're so detailed people, like I'm pretty detailed and he's pretty detailed, and we're usually trying to explain things to each other and he's trying to explain and I'm trying to explain. I've had to tell him, baby, here's my white flag. You can have it.
You can
Like
have it.
it's,
Yep.
it's not even really that deep.
Yeah.
It's not until
Right.
you pull away, it might force them to pull away and realize, like, it's not that deep.
Right.
Well, hey
We
guys,
can move on from there.
we have a question from one of the viewers.
Okay.
The viewer says, "What is the resolution you take when you ask if there is anything your spouse needs, and your spouse always says no, but the Holy Spirit is telling you they do not, they do need something, yet your spouse will not tell you, but they will tell others outside your marriage."
Whoa,
Wow.
man. I mean,
Gee.
I was formulating a response until that last
Right.
sentence.
So the last part.
That last sentence threw you off.
Yeah, if they're saying it to other individuals and not to you,
Mm.
and I'm gonna do two things. The first thing is it might hurt,
Right.
but if they're saying something to people outside and not to you, there's probably some, and I'm not saying this is the case, but I would do this, me personally, would do some soul searching as to what my interaction with my spouse looks like. That would cause her to feel like
Right.
she needs to tell other people
Someone
and
else.
not me.
Right.
That's the first thing I would do. If the Holy Spirit's telling you that you need to do something, then ask the Holy Spirit what that is and just be proactive.
Right.
Because there's sometimes, and even with the two of us, right? Because I know her, there'll be times that she'll tell me is everything okay? She's like, yeah, everything's cool. You good? Yeah, I'm good. But I know she's not.
Right.
So now I have to go into that proactive mode. And so I start to do little things that may not have anything to do with what's going on with her, because I'm not sure what's going on with her, but it opens the door to kind of bring her to a better space. So if I'm doing little stuff like, I know she's about to go get something to eat, and I'll be like, don't worry about it, I'll go get it for you. Or just little things that I know that I can do that will just help to decrease whatever her level of stress is, to get her to the point where she can be like, you know what? Earlier, I did say nothing was wrong, but I was thinking about X, Y, Z, or this was bothering me.
Right.
So you kind of have to walk that line between self-reflection and some proactive action as it relates to what your spouse is doing. But the first thing I know I would do, as soon as I heard that last sentence, in my mind, the first thing I thought was, okay, what am I doing? That's why she won't come to me.
Right.
And so I think there's some self-reflection that has to happen.
Yeah.
to
Wow.
read
And
that.
also, I think too, maybe looking back to see was there a communication or a conflict before that made me uncomfortable, where I don't want to open up again this time because last time I did XYZ happened. And I don't want that to happen again. So I'm not even going to say anything.
Right, right. You guys, I think you guys both. I mean, my natural response was just like Oliver's.
Mm,
My first thought process was, "Have you said, is it me? Could I have done something that would make her not want to speak to me about whatever it is that's bothering her? Have I responded to her in a way that made her close up rather than open up?
yeah.
And then, of course, the second thing that I would ask is, I believe in this, babe. Is there a reason why you don't want to talk to me?
Mm,
I agree 100%.
yeah.
Because if you
Gotta talk about it.
ask
Yep.
directly, is there a reason you don't want to talk to me? Now, here's the caveat to that. Don't ask that question if you're not ready for the truth.
Mm,
Because see, they may say what they need to say and it's all true, but it may not come out packaged like you like it.
mm-hmm.
So don't worry about the presentation, worry about the information.
Exactly.
Wow.
See, that takes maturity.
Yep.
Yeah.
It takes maturity for you to get somebody's raw emotions and still get the truth out of what they said.
Yeah.
Because I often say this, we frown on raw emotion, but sometimes we cultivated it.
There it is.
You know what I'm saying? How
True.
you gonna tell a person you cheating on not to talk to you crazy?
Exactly.
You cheated.
Wow.
I mean, that's why they talking crazy.
It's
So
the natural
I think
reaction.
So not only say, is it me? Is there something I have done? But then just go to that individual and say, hey, babe, I just feel something's wrong with you. You're acting differently. You're not speaking. Whatever the case may be, that's bringing your attention to what they're not doing.
Yeah.
And then you just say, hey, is there a reason why you don't want to tell me? And let them explain to you what it is. And at that point, you just have to kind of absorb it and then just reflect and say, man, I have been doing that.
And like Oliver said, though, you have to create an environment. Like I know, especially with women, and men probably feel this way too in a different way, but like we really have to feel emotionally safe to
Absolutely.
share
Yep.
something because we're opening it up. And men probably feel that as well. We tend to think they're so tough, but they also have emotions as well. But
Yeah.
Robert made a good point. He says marriage starts with building a relationship with Christ first, then with another person that has also built a relationship with Christ. God has to be in the center of any marriage, and that is true, and that is textbook. But let's be, and I'm not saying this is the scenario of the individual who first put it out there, Chris. But let's say you both consider yourselves to be Christians. You both love the Lord. You've tried to have a marriage where Christ was at the center of it. What I
Right.
have learned from my experience, literally, just like he says, he feels like God is telling him that something that he needs to do something. You kind of touched on it, Oliver. He probably just needs to do something within.
Right.
And even though something may still be going on with, his spouse, what I find is when the self-analysis begins, whatever it was you thought that was so overwhelming that was going on with that other person starts to dim and fade
Yeah.
as you start to work on you and draw yourself closer to Christ.
Yeah.
Because if the two come together, but they haven't drawn close to Christ in their own relationships, when they come together, there's not going to be a resolve.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there has to be a relationship with Christ, and where you're spending time with Him, you're listening to Him, and you're making whatever changes you need to make within yourself. And we're not saying that that's not already happening, but stay the course.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree with that.
If you're, if that's something that you want your marriage to thrive, and not just survive, you truly have to stay the course. And then what we hope is, by seeing in that one person the changes that God is doing in their lives, they win them over. Like, wait a minute, my husband is a different person.
Right.
Or, he never would have done this before, and now he's doing this. And slowly but surely, those walls start to come down in that environment without you even purposely trying to fix the environment. You
Right.
fixed it because you were willing to fix whatever was in
That's
you
good.
that could have been blocking it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. We tell couples too often, just take a trip back. You know, just look back, because nobody married somebody they hate.
Right.
You didn't walk down the aisle looking at each other like, man, I can't
I
stand
can't
this
Hate
stand
this
person.
person. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So go back.
Psychopaths.
Right. So we tell people go back and just walk through the last however many years it was, and be honest with yourself about when you start to see a shift.
Right.
What was happening or what was not happening that used to happen?
Mhm.
What were you saying or what were you not saying that you used to say? And begin to reincorporate those things
Right. Right.
to get you back to that place.
Yeah.
Because if we're honest with ourselves, right? And this is something I had to do. I had to look at myself in the mirror one day and be like, okay, dude, you are the problem. Like,
Mm.
let's be real.
You tripping.
Right. I'm blaming everybody else. I have a lot of, reasons, if you will, or excuses why things are not happening that should be happening. Just figure it out. Like, let's see what the root cause is and then go from there. And we just tell couples to do that. Just take a trip back down memory lane. What were you doing for your spouse? What were you saying to your spouse that was getting the kinds of responses and creating the kind of atmosphere that you now currently desire,
Mhm.
and start putting those things back into play?
Right.
That's right.
Right. And like you said, that self-analysis is key, man. I mean, when we take the time to say to ourselves, is it me? Could it be me? What we do is we position ourselves, we sort of position ourselves to now um, step in the shoes of our significant other.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, but when we're always, as Robert said, when we're always looking externally,
Mm-hmm.
we're never considering that we could be the problem.
Right.
Right.
And that's a hurtful position to be in.
Mhm.
When it's like, really? Like all this evidence shows that it's you.
Mm.
But still somehow, and so, but then when we're on the receiving end of that, can we physically look in that mirror and say, yeah, Jimmy, you have some flaws.
Mhm.
This is what's driving her crazy. Just stop doing it.
Yeah.
And I often say that to people, and I'm like, the answer is really easy. Do the opposite of what you
Or
do.
what you doing right now?
Yeah.
And we can bring this back full circle to what we said at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
There are three entities: you, her, and the relationship.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing, the way you're carrying on. It may make you feel good, but is it helping or hurting the relationship?
Right.
And you
Is it
have
helping
to
you to
be
win or
honest
not?
about that.
Yep.
I mean, it's too important. We've invested so much. When you get married to someone, your families are married to one another. Many times you have children that are involved.
Yeah.
It's just way too much to just take it as, well, that person is tripping. You got to take your gaze. And I think that's the thing. You're almost mesmerized with blaming the other person,
Yeah.
that it takes sometimes, and in many cases, it takes something drastic
Oh man.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
get your focus off of them. Be like, wait a minute, whoa,
Right.
Very
Right.
I
true.
need to get myself together. And
Very
we
true.
hope
Very
that
true.
it wouldn't have to take something so drastic in many cases, because you want the family to still stay intact.
Absolutely.
But that's why I love that scripture where God says, humble yourself.
Mhm.
That's an implication.
Mhm.
You do it, or I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it's like, okay, God, I got that, because
Right.
I don't know what yours gonna look like. Let me go and handle this,
Right.
And I
Exactly.
think that's what I hate. And I've always said this to God: God, please get my attention, but please allow me to
To heed
gain my
yeah.
right mind before you get my attention.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Because
Ooh.
when God gets your attention, everybody know it was God. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
You had that coming.
Because even when we think about the story of
Mhm.
Job, his friends were right. Yeah, God's doing that. They just didn't know the why. You see
Exactly.
what I'm saying? They were like, dude, what did you do?
Yeah.
Right.
Because this cannot be normal. This has to be God. You know what I'm saying? They
Mhm.
knew it was God. They just didn't know why
Know
God was
why.
doing it. God was bragging on him,
Mhm.
which
That's
caused
my
all those
servant. Yeah.
calamities in his life. But
Mhm.
I don't want God to have to get my attention to be a better husband,
Wow.
Yep.
to be a
Wow.
better
Agreed.
father.
Mhm.
I want God to let me see those subtle little signals and go, oh wow, let me change.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, because when God kind of shakes you, you're gonna know,
You
hey,
know,
this, oh man, and like Rachel said, you don't want that tragic thing.
Yeah.
right?
That tragic thing is when now you got to deal with the consequences of that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Right.
you grew from it, but man, how bad was that?
At what cost?
At what cost,
At what
right?
I always say
cost?
that. What
Right.
did it cost you when it's
Yeah.
all said and done?
Well,
I've
guys,
heard
look,
someone say, oh, go ahead.
this conversation could go on. I'm seeing that we're like 10 minutes past what we promised to
Oh
keep you
man.
all.
Oh,
And I don't want to I definitely don't want to keep you all beyond what we agreed to, too far beyond what we agreed, because we've already exceeded that. But before we go, I do want you all to tell the listening audience, about some upcoming events, some products and materials that you all have, so people can know who you are, how to reach you all, how to follow you guys. Can you all give them your social media and all that good stuff?
Sure,
Jessica
absolutely.
said no. Sorry, Jessica. She said keep going.
aw.
You can get a hold of us. Most of our social media is going to be Denali LLC. So Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn,
Twitter.
Twitter is all at Denali LLC. What you see on the screen there. You can go to our website, which is Denali DENOLI.org, and from there you can get to the YouTube page, to the podcast, all of that you can get from the website. On the website, we have some T-shirts. We have a couples journal that we just released that we're really excited about. We've been getting some good reviews. With this whole conversation that we've been talking about, it's a guide to help couples have those kinds of conversations. So you can pick that up there as well. And upcoming events, Thursday coming up, we have a free webinar. And I think there's still some spots. And so if you go to any of our social media, you can register for that. It's called Spice. It's the basic ingredients that we believe all marriages should have.
Okay.
So that's something coming up.
So Oliver, I know we're using the same system. Can you throw your journal up so people can see it? Are you able to do that?
I can. Let me
Yeah,
see if I
throw
can.
that up, man, because I really want people to support you. Because as a matter of fact, I'm going to get it too. I definitely want to support you all. And
Jessica's pushing. She said afterglow.
Will it let me add stuff to yours?
I
I
don't
don't
know. I
think it'll let
hope
me
so.
add to yours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't think it'll let me add.
Yeah, I wish I could have.
Well, just go to
I wish
his.
I wish I had thought about it earlier and would have gotten
Gotten it
the
from
image.
but
Yeah,
They
Yeah.
can find it at your
on your
on
website.
your
Yeah.
website.
You can get it on the website. You can get it on Amazon,
BarnesandNoble.com.
BarnesandNoble.com.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and it's called Have a Conversation.
yeah.
That's
That's
our
the journal.
catchphrase. Have a conversation.
I know
Couples.
that's right.
Well, guys, again, thank you all so much for taking this time out to be with us. Um, um, you know, I will continue to support you guys and watch you guys and follow because you all are amazing.
Man, we appreciate you
you.
guys. Thank you.
Several months ago, I ran across you guys and I was like, oh wow, man, that's good, and because it was started with the YouTube channel, your
Mhm.
tips that you were giving.
Yep.
And when you started playing those bloopers, I was like, boy, if that doesn't look like me and my wife.
I first saw them on Praying Wives. You would post things
Okay.
on
Yeah.
Praying Wives, and I was like, oh. And then I found out we knew some of the same people.
Right.
People.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's,
Yep.
it's a small world, but
Mhm.
we always talk about this is the type of ministry that you need as many people on deck
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
as
Absolutely.
possible
Yep.
Mhm.
to do this kind of work.
Definitely.
And not only that, but also just to keep you uplifted,
Definitely.
because we recognize this. The more that we do this, the more the devil is on attack.
Oh
Right.
yeah.
I mean, he's constantly getting in Rachel, and I'm
Mhm.
like, Lord,
We almost made it through. We almost made it through
All right,
one
slip that one in,
Facebook
bro.
Live
I was like,
without, excuse me, without him throwing me under
Yeah.
the bus, babe. And I was about to say
Slip
that was
that one in real
proper,
quick.
oh,
but
Rachel,
you just had
baby,
to.
look,
Oh,
got to
okay.
get my key in there.
Yeah, I'll remember that later.
Well, guys, again, thank you all so much for joining us, man. And look, we look forward to actually having you guys back again. So check your calendar,
Absolutely.
love
man.
it.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll definitely be reaching back out to you all. And once we out of this quarantine, maybe we can actually meet in person.
Definitely.
Because
That
we
would be
met very
awesome.
well over social media. But man, I would love to just break bread with you guys and
Absolutely.
enjoy.
We
your
got to make
company.
that happen. Definitely.
Can't
Guys,
wait.
again, for those of you who are listening, you go to @Denali on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram,
LLC,
and
Denali
yeah,
LLC.
Denali
Denali
LLC.
LLC. And then if you want to go to their website, again, that is denali.org,
Mhm.
www.denali.org. So go to their website and get that journal. Let's have a conversation. And I think you all will truly be blessed by it. And follow them as well, too, because we enjoy them. So I'm praying that you guys will, too. And until next week, we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye bye, guys.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.